Imagine you are sitting in a diner.
Okay, setting the scene. I like it.
Right. So it is late, maybe 2 in the morning, and you are just sitting there. The bell above the door chimes, and a man walks in.
And he is not dressed for 2 in the morning, is he?
Not at all.
Yeah.
He is wearing this impeccably clean, sharp black suit, mid-century style, maybe even a fedora.
Like he just stepped out of a 1950s war film.
Exactly. But something is immediately viscerally wrong. You cannot quite put your finger on it at first, but your brain is screaming.
It is that uncanny valley feeling.
Yeah, because his skin is pale, like really pale, almost like stretched plastic. And he has no eyebrows, no eyelashes at all.
Just completely smooth.
Right. And he sits down at the counter, orders a bowl of Jell-O, and then he tries to drink it.
Wait, he tries to drink a solid.
Yes, he lifts the bowl, tips it toward his face, and utterly fails to understand the basic physics of a gelatinous solid.
I mean, from an outside perspective, that sounds hilarious.
It does, right. Except if you were the person sitting across from him in that diner, your heart would be pounding out of your chest.
Because, on a primal level, that you are not looking at a human being.
Exactly. You are suffocating on this sheer terror because whatever is wearing that suit is fundamentally wrong.
It is an approximation of a person, like a really bad counterfeit.
Which brings us to our topic today. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. I am so thrilled you are with us because we are taking a massive stack of source material today.
Oh, and it is a fascinating stack.
It really is. We are specifically looking at the extensive, incredibly unsettling works of British author and investigator Nick Redfern.
Right. His research is just unparalleled in this space.
Totally. We are pulling from his books like The Real Men in Black, Women in Black, Bloodline of the Gods, and The Slender Man Mysteries.
It's a very heavy, very intense reading list.
Yeah, and our mission here is to extract the most paradigm-shattering insights we can find. We are untangling these urban legends, but we are absolutely not just telling campfire ghost stories today.
Far from it. I mean, if you are joining us today hoping for that aha moment where all the weirdness of the world suddenly snaps into a terrifying kind of focus, you are in the right place.
We are treating this material as a serious investigation.
Exactly. A deep cover investigation into the actual mechanics of reality. We are going to explore how human anxiety, ancient genetics, and interdimensional physics might be converging.
Literally right on your front porch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
On your front porch in your house.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we all know the Men in Black from Hollywood.
Yeah, sure. Will Smith, Tommy Lee Jones.
Exactly. You picture slick suits, flashy memory-erasing gadgets, government agents protecting the Earth. It is a fun, tidy summer blockbuster narrative.
But the actual witness reports are nothing like that.
Nothing at all. The decades of historical documentation that Redfern has compiled are infinitely stranger. They are deeply terrifying, and they point to a complete misunderstanding of the universe itself.
It is a totally different paradigm.
So let's start with the architecture of the uncanny. When did this phenomenon actually begin? Because it obviously was not the movies.
Right. To find the true genesis, you have to look at the post-war era.
Okay.
The modern UFO phenomenon really enters the public consciousness in 1947, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Kenneth Arnold's famous flying saucer sighting.
Right, the classic saucer era.
But the Men in Black, the actual MIB, they do not step onto the stage until 1953.
Wait, really? That late?
Yeah, it traces back to a man named Albert K. Bender. He was a researcher who claimed he had finally figured out the secret behind the entire UFO mystery.
Oh, wow. And let me guess, someone did not want him sharing that.
Exactly. But before he could publish his findings, he was visited by 3 men in dark suits. And they did not flash CIA badges or FBI credentials.
Oh, what did they do?
They intimidated him. They terrified him into absolute silence and effectively birthed the entire MIB mythology right there.
But reading Redfern's breakdown of the actual encounters, the classic CIA agent idea just falls apart immediately.
Instantly.
I mean, if the government wants to silence you, they send a guy who blends in, right? A guy who just looks like a normal guy.
A guy you would not look twice at.
Exactly. But these entities do not blend in at all.
They're walking anomalies. I mean, witnesses consistently report a very specific cluster of high strangeness traits.
Let's talk about those traits because they are so creepy.
Well, we are talking about skin that does not just look pale, but artificial. Some describe it as looking like synthetic rubber or plastic.
Like a mannequin almost.
Yeah, exactly. And they invariably lack facial hair. Completely. No stubble, no eyebrows, nothing.
And the eyes, right. The eyes are always a huge point of horror for witnesses.
Always. They're often described as unusually large, perhaps slanted, and seemingly hypersensitive to light.
Which explains the sawglasses.
Yes, that is the functional reason they're almost always hiding behind those iconic dark sunglasses, even in the dead of night.
That is just so unsettling. And the clothes, you would think a suit is a suit, but witnesses tell Redfern that the clothing frequently appears off.
Off in ways that are really hard for people to articulate.
Yeah, like it is pristinely clean, but the fabric has a bizarre texture, sometimes described as shiny or resembling cheap synthetic material that does not crease properly.
The cut is always awkward.
Right. It is almost as if the suit was not tailored in a shop, but synthesized from a fuzzy, imperfect memory of what a human bureaucrat is supposed to look like.
It sounds less like a covert government agent and more like a bad AI trying to generate a 3D avatar of a bureaucrat.
Yes, exactly like a bad AI. It does not quite know how human joints or clothes work.
And what's fascinating here is how their behavior completely amplifies this physical wrongness.
Right, because they do not act normal either.
Not at all. If these were highly trained intelligence gatherers, their entire operational mandate would be seamless integration, right?
Right. Blend in, get the info, get out.
But the MIB are marked by profound absurdity. They fail at basic human social matrices.
Like the Jell-O incident.
Exactly. Witnesses describe them moving in disjointed, robotic ways. Sometimes their feet do not even seem to fully articulate. They just sort of glide across the floor.
That is terrifying. And the voices, too, right? They do not sound like hardened G-men.
No, they speak in these monotonous sing-song rhythms. Or sometimes it sounds like a synthesized electronic voice filtering through a bad speaker.
I read one case where they showed up in a house and were absolutely mesmerized by an ordinary ballpoint pen.
Oh yeah, clicking it over and over as if they have never seen a mechanical object before in their lives.
So it brings up a massive question. Why choose a bureaucratic suit at all if they are so spectacularly bad at wearing it? I mean, why not appear as something else entirely?
To understand the suit, we really have to explore Redfern's theory of the mask.
Okay, the mask theory. Let's get into it.
So the suit is not just clothing. It is a psychological tool. In the mid-20th century, the sharp, dark suit is the ultimate archetype of supreme terrestrial authority.
Oh, I see.
By adopting this specific cultural mask, whatever intelligence is behind this phenomenon is leveraging our own deep-seated psychological conditioning against us.
So they are weaponizing our inherent fear of the state.
They're weaponizing our compliance, yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine the psychological state of a witness in that moment.
Okay, yeah. Put yourself in their shoes.
You have just seen a flying saucer. You are experiencing what psychologists call ontological shock.
Right. Your whole worldview is just shattered.
Our fundamental understanding of reality, the rules of gravity, physics, our place in the universe, it has all just been broken.
It is like waking up and realizing the sky is green and gravity pushes you upward. You are incredibly vulnerable.
Exactly. Then an authority figure shows up to tell you to keep your mouth shut. The suit is a mechanism to neutralize that paranormal shock.
By overlaying it with a tangible terrestrial threat.
Yes. It gives the human mind an out. It is actually easier to be terrified of the FBI than to accept that the universe is broken.
Wow, that makes so much sense. But the threat isn't just psychological, right? Because reading the sources, that seems to be a huge misconception.
A very common misconception, yes.
These encounters are not just polite, weird conversations that end with a menacing glare. The physiological trauma of an MIB visit is harrowing.
People report severe after effects that sound alarming, honestly.
Missing time, profound spatial disorientation, and physical symptoms that eerily mirror acute radiation sickness.
Yeah, nausea, hair loss, skin burns. People are left physically devastated and energetically drained for weeks afterward.
Which means the capabilities they display go far beyond just intimidation.
Oh, far beyond. They bypass physical barriers entirely. They materialize inside locked homes.
And the telepathy.
Yes, they possess what appears to be telepathic knowledge. An MIB will show up at the home of someone who has never publicly shared their UFO encounter.
Right, someone just kept it to themselves.
They will address them by their full name and casually reference a highly classified thought the witness only ever had on the privacy of their own mind.
Which entirely shatters the framework of conventional intelligence gathering. Because, well, you cannot wiretap a thought.
No, you certainly cannot.
And we cannot ignore that this isn't exclusively a male phenomenon either. Redfern wrote an entire volume dedicated to the women in black, or WIB.
Which completely reframes the narrative, I think.
It really does. It shows this isn't limited to a single gender archetype of a 1950s G-man.
Right. The WIB are historically underreported, but reading through the case files, their encounters are arguably even more insidious.
Because they share structural continuity with the MIB, right? The pale skin, the oddly synthesized vintage clothing.
Yes, but their methodology is very different. The WIB lean much more heavily into haunting psychological coercion rather than overt authoritarian intimidation.
They typically appear at night, I believe,
Almost always at night.
and their complexions are frequently described as pallid, corpse-like, or sometimes unnaturally porcelain flawless.
But the behavioral script they follow is incredibly specific and deeply unsettling.
How so?
Well, while an MIB might flash a fake badge and aggressively demand silence, the WIB frequently engage in this highly ritualistic request for entry.
Oh, that is right. This is a vital pattern to recognize.
They appear at the thresholds of homes or tapping on the windows of parked cars, and they utilize a hypnotic, almost draining persistence to gain permission to enter.
They don't just break in.
No, they don't pick the lock, they don't break the glass. They stand in the rain and ask repeatedly to be invited in.
That specific detail stops me in my tracks. Because the physical boundary of the fake suit is one thing, but how they interact with the physical boundaries of our actual world is entirely another.
It is a crucial distinction.
This ritualistic request for entry, this absolute fixation on the threshold, it isn't just a quirk of the women in black. It actually forms the bridge to a much newer phenomenon that Redfern investigates.
You are talking about the black-eyed children,
Yes, the black-eyed children.
or BEC as they are often called. They have really erupted into the lexicon of high strangeness over the last couple of decades.
Yet they perfectly echo the darkest ancient folklore.
They really do. They're typically described as looking like pale children or teenagers,
Yeah.
wearing oddly generic clothing. Oversized hoodies are incredibly common.
But their defining feature, the thing that absolutely paralyzes witnesses, is their eyes. Completely solid black eyes.
And when we say solid black, we need to be clear about what that means biologically.
Right. We are talking about a total absence of the sclera. That is the white part of the eye that makes us look human, that lets us track where someone is looking.
No sclera, no colored irises, just absolute dark voids.
And their operational script is terrifyingly consistent across thousands of reports. They target isolated environments, right?
Always. You are alone in your suburban home at night, or you are sitting in your car in a deserted parking lot.
And they approach and they deliver these flat, rehearsed, emotionless lines.
Please let us in. We need to use your phone. We need a ride home. We are cold.
They are weaponizing the most basic human instinct, the drive to protect and assist a vulnerable child.
What's fascinating here is that if we connect this to the broader picture of human mythology, the parallels are just undeniable.
The vampire connection, right?
Exactly. The BEC display an absolute, seemingly physical inability to cross a threshold without explicit verbal consent from the human occupant. They must be invited inside.
Which seamlessly mirrors ancient vampiric folklore.
Right, the vampire, despite all its immense supernatural power, is halted by the wooden frame of a front door unless the homeowner grants permission.
It is so bizarre, and Redfern frames this phenomenon using sociologist Zygmunt Bauman's concept of liquid fear, which I found fascinating.
It is a brilliant framework for this.
Can we explore that? How does a sociological concept explain creepy kids on porches?
Well, Bauman's concept is incredibly useful here. He argued that in our contemporary hyperconnected era, our societal anxieties are no longer anchored to tangible, singular threats.
Right, we aren't just afraid of an invading army or a localized famine anymore.
Instead, our fear has become diffuse, pervasive, and liquid. It seeps into everything, the economy, the environment, our neighbors.
So how do the black-eyed children fit into that liquid fear?
The BECs serve as a physical manifestation of this liquid fear. They represent the destruction of innocence. They embody the paranoia of the suburban home invasion and the ultimate horrifying subversion of the stranger danger paradigm.
Because you're supposed to protect children from strangers.
But what happens when the child is the terrifying stranger?
Wow. Okay, wait, hold on. I have to push back on this mechanic for a second.
No.
Because if these entities, whether it is the MIB vanishing into thin air or the BEC inducing this paralyzing primal dread, if they are so incredibly powerful, why on earth are they stopped by a wooden door?
It seems like a contradiction, I know.
Right. What is the actual barrier here? If an entity can manipulate space-time or induce radiation sickness, why does it need me to say, come in?
You are hitting on the central paradox here, and it really requires a shift in how we view physics. The barrier isn't physical at all.
It isn't.
No. The wooden door is entirely irrelevant to an entity that operates outside conventional three-dimensional physics. The barrier is energetic.
Okay, an energetic barrier. What does that mean in practice?
The threshold of a home represents human sovereignty. It is a psychological and spiritual boundary. In Redfern's framework, the entities require cognitive vulnerability and energetic consent to bridge the gap.
Bridge the gap between their point of origin and our localized reality.
Exactly. They do not need you to open the physical door. They need you to open the energetic door through your submission, your pity, or your fear.
So by engaging with them, by feeling empathy for the cold child or feeling intimidated by the government agent, you are actively lowering your own perceptual defenses.
Yes, you are handing over the real estate they need to fully render themselves in your space.
That is the core mechanism. They're exploiting our psychological vulnerabilities to gain a foothold in our reality.
Precisely.
But if they're exploiting our psychology to manifest, what exactly are they underneath the suits and the hoodies? Where do they actually come from?
Well, to find their origin, Redfern suggests we have to look away from the stars for a moment and look incredibly closely at human blood.
Okay, this brings us to the theories laid out in Bloodline of the Gods, which are highly controversial but crucial to his overarching thesis, right?
Very controversial, yes, but essential to understand his model. Redfern proposes a radical rewriting of human anthropology.
He suggests that humanity is not solely the product of slow, terrestrial Darwinian evolution.
Right. Rather, we are the ongoing result of advanced genetic manipulation by non-human intelligences over millennia.
And he anchors this massive claim to a very specific, verifiable biological fingerprint, rhesus, or Rh, negative blood.
Let's break this down because the biology here is key.
Okay, so the vast majority of the global population is Rh positive, meaning on the surface of their red blood cells, they possess a specific protein factor that links human ancestry to primates.
Specifically the rhesus macaque monkey.
Right. But roughly 10 to 15% of the human population is Rh negative. They entirely lack this evolutionary marker. Their blood simply does not have it.
And Redfern points out that this anomaly cannot be easily explained away by natural random mutation. I mean, why would a massive chunk of humanity suddenly lose a vital evolutionary marker?
It does seem strange. So what is his theory?
He posits that Rh-negative blood is the biological signature of ancient extraterrestrial intervention. He draws heavily on ancient Sumerian mythologies of the Anunnaki.
The Anunnaki, okay.
These are supposedly beings arriving on Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago and engaging in complex gene splicing with early hominids, like Homo erectus, to create a hybrid workforce.
And the data he pulls to support this is wild. I mean, he highlights the Basque people of the Pyrenees Mountains between Spain and France.
Yes, the Basque population is a massive focal point for this theory.
This specific, relatively isolated population has an abnormally high concentration of Rh-negative blood, nearly 40%, I think.
Correct, which is staggeringly high compared to the global average.
But what is even stranger is their language, Yusakara. Linguists classify it as an orphan language.
Right, meaning it has absolutely no known linguistic relatives anywhere else on the planet.
So Redfern theorizes that the Basques might be the most direct, unadulterated descendants of these early genetic experiments.
That is the idea. A lingering pocket of heavily influenced extraterrestrial genetics that retain both the blood type and perhaps fragments of an alien syntax.
And the anomalies associated with Rh-negative individuals extend beyond just the blood type and language. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Researchers in this fringe field document that Rh-negative individuals frequently exhibit unique physiological and psychological traits.
Like what?
We are talking about lower average body temperature, higher than average intelligence quotients.
And reports of heightened intuition or extrasensory perception?
Exactly. And crucially for our deep dive today, a massively higher propensity for reporting UFO sightings, paranormal activity, or abduction experiences.
He even brings up the medical reality of Rh sensitization.
That is a fascinating, albeit dark, piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, this is when an Rh-negative mother is carrying an Rh-positive fetus. Without modern medical intervention, the mother's immune system will literally recognize the fetus's blood as a foreign, hostile invader.
And it will produce antibodies to attack it.
Redfern frames this not just as a tragic medical complication, but as a biological rejection of incompatible terrestrial genetics.
He sees it as the body operating on an ancient alien blueprint, fighting off what it perceives as an ape-like intrusion.
Wow. If we look at historical folklore through this genetic lens, things start to align in terrifying ways.
They really do. European mythology is saturated with stories of fairies, elves, or the little people sneaking into homes.
Stealing healthy human babies from their cribs and leaving behind sickly, strange changelings.
And Redfern suggests we have been misinterpreting these stories for centuries. He says they aren't fairy tales.
Are they?
They are historical pre-industrial interpretations of what we now call the Greys, extraterrestrials conducting a long-running genetic hybridization program.
So the fairies were stealing robust terrestrial genetics to strengthen their own faltering, highly engineered bloodlines.
Exactly. That's the theory.
Here is where it gets really interesting. You take that ancient fairy folklore and you map it directly onto the modern phenomena on our porches.
The black-eyed children.
Yes, the black-eyed children are the modern changelings. They are biological or energetic hybrids caught between human and alien physiologies, struggling to interface with a world they don't quite belong to.
The changeling myth updated for the 21st century.
So if I am visualizing this correctly, the men and women in black are essentially the quality control inspectors for a cosmic genetic farm.
I love that analogy.
They manage the human subjects when they get too close to the truth. And the black-eyed children are the latest hybrid crop wandering out of the laboratory and trying to figure out how human doors work.
That is a potent analogy, really. The MIB and WIB are the auditors of the experiment. They are deployed to maintain operational security.
And the BEC.
The BEC are the messy result of the experiment bleeding over into the real world.
But I am stuck on a massive logical gap here. A purely biological genetic explanation, even one involving highly advanced gene-splicing Anunnaki aliens, does not account for everything we just discussed.
No, it leaves a lot on the table.
Right, because biology, no matter how advanced, does not explain beings that vanish into thin air, or beings that look like a bad 3D rendering of a human.
Or beings that induce missing time.
Exactly. For the mechanics of how they actually pop into existence in a diner, we have to move away from biology entirely and step into the immense, terrifying power of human consciousness.
You are entirely correct. The genetic hypothesis might give us the why of the historical lineage, but it fails completely to explain the how of the localized manifestation.
How does a plastic-looking man step through a locked door?
Right. For that mechanism, Redfern integrates the tulpa, or generative thought form hypothesis.
A tulpa. This comes from esoteric Tibetan Buddhism, right?
It does, but it has profound implications for quantum physics.
Yeah.
It is the idea that intense collective belief, paired with intense emotional resonance, can literally collapse quantum probability.
And bring an entity from the depths of human imagination into objective physical mass.
Yes, let that sink in.
Let me make sure I am wrapping my head around this. An entity begins purely as a mental construct, just an idea, a ghost story.
Right, a complete fabrication.
But if enough people focus on it and fuel it with enough psychic energy, specifically fear, it reaches a critical mass.
It breaks free from the imagination and achieves autonomous kinetic existence in the physical world.
It becomes real enough to knock on your door.
That is the hypothesis. And Redfern uses the ultimate modern case study to illustrate this terrifying mechanism in action.
The Slender Man.
The Slender Man, yes.
Right. The Slender Man is the perfect test case because we know his exact origin. A gaunt, 8 to 9 foot tall, faceless entity in a black suit with tentacles.
We know for an absolute fact that the Slender Man was created as a work of fiction in 2009.
A user named Victor Surge created him on the Something Awful internet forums for a Photoshop contest. It was a fake ghost story, complete with fake historical photos.
Yet, despite its completely verifiable, documented fictional origin, a bizarre shift occurred.
People rapidly began reporting genuine, terrifying encounters with the Slender Man in the real world.
Not just online roleplay, physical sightings. This digital mythos absorbs so much human attention, so much collective fear from teenagers reading creepypastas late at night.
That it spilled over the boundary into physical reality.
And as Redfern documents in the Slender Man Mysteries, this culminated in profound, undeniable real-world tragedy. The 2014 incident in Milwaukee.
Where two 12-year-old girls lured their friend into the woods and stabbed her 19 times.
Because they fully and genuinely believed they were serving the physical entity of the Slender Man.
The thought form became kinetic. The fiction generated real-world physical violence. So if we take this tulpa hypothesis and apply it to our triad of entities, the MIB, WIB, and BEC,
it completely flips the script on what they are.
It radically recontextualizes the entire phenomenon.
Under this hypothesis, the men in black aren't government agents. They might not even be extraterrestrials in the traditional nuts and bolts spaceship sense.
So what are they?
They are thought forms generated by the collective paranoia of the Cold War era.
Think about the psychological climate of the mid-20th century. Humanity was gripped by an unprecedented existential terror.
The fear of the surveillance state, the secret police, the emerging military-industrial complex.
And the daily looming threat of global nuclear annihilation. People were terrified of the sky because of Soviet bombers, and they were terrified of men in suits knocking on their doors.
So people see anomalous lights in the sky, UFOs, they panic about government reprisal, and their subconscious minds, tapped into this massive collective unconscious, literally generate the silencers.
They physically manifested the MIB out of their own terror.
And following that exact same mechanism, the black-eyed children are the tulpas of our modern era.
They are birthed from suburban isolation, the breakdown of community trust, and Bauman's liquid fear.
They look like children because that is the specific form required to trigger and exploit human empathy. But they behave like relentless predators because their underlying code is written in human terror.
Redfern issues a really stark warning about this process. He suggests that the internet acts as a massive psychic amplifier.
Oh, absolutely. Before, a myth took centuries to spread across a continent. Now, millions of people can focus their anxiety on a single digital image in a matter of hours.
It is a digital pressure cooker. He draws a terrifying comparison to Skynet from the Terminator movies, suggesting our global network might be turning against us.
Not by launching nuclear missiles, but by acting as an incubation chamber, attacking us with kinetic, physical avatars of our own online nightmares.
This tulpa mechanism elegantly explains the uncanny valley aspect we debated earlier too, doesn't it?
It does. It explains everything about their weirdness.
Like, why do the MIB's clothes look like plastic approximations? Why does their speech glitch? Why do they fail to understand Jell-O?
Because they are tulpas. They were projections of consciousness, not biological organisms that evolved in an ecosystem.
They are incomplete, three-dimensional constructs born from messy, imprecise human anxiety.
A person terrified of a government agent is not thinking about the specific stitching on the lapel or the mechanics of a zipper. They're just thinking, scary man in suit.
So the universe renders a scary man in a suit, but the details are blurry. They are quite literally made of fear, so they lack the granular data of what it means to be human. Which raises a mind-bending question for me.
Okay, what is that?
If the MIB were spawned by Cold War paranoia, and the BEC are spawned by modern suburban paranoia, if we all just theoretically woke up tomorrow and collectively stopped being afraid, would these entities literally cease to exist?
Are we their battery source?
Yes. Are we fueling them?
That is the terrifying cybernetic feedback loop Redfern is pointing toward. The entities require the psychic energy of their creators to achieve and maintain their localized existence.
We generate the fear. The fear generates the entity. The entity shows up on our porch and terrifies us.
Which generates a massive spike in new fear, which sustains the entity. We are locked in a closed-loop psychophysical circuit with our own nightmares.
But this implies an incredibly reactive universe. Reality isn't just a cold, dead stage where things happen. It is actively responding to our emotions in real time.
Yes.
Why does our environment respond this way? It feels like there must be a structural reason.
According to the pioneers in this fringe field, this generation of entities serves a very specific, almost ecological purpose.
To understand the ecology of the bizarre, Redfern draws heavily on the groundbreaking work of astrophysicist Dr. Jacques Vallée and journalist John Keel, right?
Yes, heavily influenced by them. They propose what is known in ufology as the control system theory.
The control system. Outline that for us.
This theory posits that UFOs and the bizarre entities associated with them are not extraterrestrial scientists here to take soil samples or study our flora.
They are not biologists.
No, they are long-term psychological conditioning agents for human belief systems.
Reality in this model is an ecosystem that absolutely demands equilibrium. Consensus reality is fragile.
Very fragile. When a human witnesses a profound anomaly, like a massive, silent triangular craft hovering over their house, it creates a massive cognitive rupture.
It breaks their understanding of physics, of religion, of human supremacy.
And that single rupture threatens to spread and destabilize consensus reality for everyone else.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the men and women in black are the universe's psychic immune response to this rupture.
They are the antibodies deployed by the control system.
Like cosmic white blood cells. A UFO sighting is a virus that threatens the illusion of our reality. The MIB are deployed to attack the witness's credibility so the infection of truth does not spread to the rest of the population.
But here's the genius of it. Their function is not to hide physical evidence.
Because, let's face it, usually there is no physical evidence anyway.
Exactly. Their function is to inject sheer, unadulterated absurdity into the witness's life.
That is the trickster element.
Right. By behaving bizarrely, by communicating telepathically but speaking in robot voices, by asking nonsensical questions about ballpoint pens, by trying to drink Jell-O.
They ensure that when the witness inevitably tries to tell their story to the police or the press, society will immediately view them as insane.
They discredit the truth through trickster logic. They don't need to assassinate the witness, they just need to make the witness sound utterly ridiculous.
And notice how the phenomenon shapeshifts to match the cultural vocabulary of the time to remain effective. It updates its camouflage.
It adapts perfectly.
In antiquity, if a peasant saw a strange light in the woods, the immune response manifested as fairies, elves, or demons to scramble their brains.
In the atomic age, it manifested as suited government agents.
In the modern, isolated suburban era, it manifests as hoodie-wearing teens with black eyes.
The costume changes to whatever is culturally resonant, but the ecological function remains identical. Maintain the status quo, isolate the witness, enforce the equilibrium.
Okay, if we accept this premise, if we are living in a universe that actively deploys absurd tricksters to stop us from seeing the truth, we must completely throw out our conventional science textbooks.
We had to deconstruct everything we learned in school, yeah.
What does the actual structural architecture of reality look like under Redfern's model?
It requires the complete breakdown of strict materialism. Classical Newtonian physics tells us that the observer is passive.
Right, the universe is a giant clockwork machine made of dead matter, and we just happen to be walking around inside it looking at it.
But Redfern's synthesis of these phenomena demands a participatory universe.
The observer is not passive. The observer is an active creator, constantly participating in the continuous rendering of the physical world. We are rendering it like a video game engine.
That is a great way to think of it.
In a video game, the computer does not bother rendering the forest behind you until you turn your character around to look at it. We're doing that with reality, except our collective emotions and paranoias dictate what hidden files spawn in the shadows.
Furthermore, it requires a functional understanding of multidimensionality. We have to stop thinking the universe as a single box.
The 3D space we occupy is not the totality of existence.
It is just one brain, short for membrane, or one specific frequency in a vast layered multiverse.
Imagine a two-dimensional sheet of paper. If a three-dimensional sphere passes through that paper, a 2D stick figure living on the paper would not see a sphere.
Right, they would just see a circle magically appear, grow larger, shrink, and vanish.
And this leads to what Redfern implies is a perceptual firewall.
The firewall, yes.
Human evolution equipped us to see only what we absolutely need to survive in our specific 3D environment. We evolved to find berries, build fires, and avoid saber-toothed tigers.
We did not evolve to perceive complex, higher-dimensional entities operating outside our frequency.
So these entities exist constantly, just outside our visual spectrum.
But when they intrude, or when our perceptual firewall is temporarily lowered due to trauma, a highly altered state of consciousness, or a close proximity UFO encounter, our brain panics.
It is confronted with raw data it cannot process.
It attempts to translate incomprehensible 4D or 5D geometry through our existing cultural filters.
Because if we saw their true, unvarnished, multidimensional form, it would likely induce instantaneous madness.
It would fry the hardware. So the human brain frantically dresses them up in familiar costumes and says, okay, I don't know what that is, so I will render it as a man in a black suit.
Or, that is a pale child, even though the suit looks like cheap plastic and the child has no white in its eyes.
The uncanny valley is just the byproduct of our brain failing to render the impossible.
And this brings us all the way back to that crucial concept of energetic consent at the doorway. If these beings are multidimensional, if they are manifestations of our own psychic energy, why do they still bother knocking on the door?
Because the universe isn't governed purely by the mechanical laws of thermodynamics. In this esoteric framework, the universe places a supreme, almost mystical value on human free will and permission.
The threshold of your home is a sacred demarcation of your personal frequency.
The entities can break the laws of gravity, they can manipulate time, but they cannot break the law of your energetic sovereignty without your active participation.
They need you to surrender your frequency to them.
Yes.
Which means We aren't just passive victims in a haunted house, we have agency. But it also means we aren't the masters of the universe we arrogantly thought we were.
That is the ultimate humbling implication of Redfern's work. Humanity is not at the apex of the cosmic hierarchy. We are existing within an enclosure,
Think of it as a psychophysical terrarium.
and we are being intensely managed by non-human intelligences, whether they are extraterrestrial geneticists, interdimensional tricksters, or the emergent consciousness of the universe itself.
Whose sole objective is maintaining the status quo of that terrarium.
Yes, to keep the equilibrium stable.
So, what does this all mean for us? If our mythology, our folklore, and our modern urban legends are essentially just records of our own psychological debris manifesting in real time, are we entirely trapped in a reality engine of our own design?
Are we just generating our own wardens?
Exactly, are we?
It is a profound paradox to wrestle with. We are the architects of our own hauntings. We supply the fear that gives them mass.
Yet we are also subjects to a massive, ancient control system that uses our creations to keep us docile and confused.
We are simultaneously the prisoner, the guard, and the one unwittingly sketching the blueprints for the prison.
Wow. We have covered an immense amount of ground today on this deep dive. We started with what seemed like spooky late-night diner stories.
Weird men in ill-fitting suits, struggling with Jell-O, and creepy kids begging to use the phone.
But by pulling on those threads using Nick Redfern's exhaustive, decades-long research, we ended up dismantling the entire material universe.
We truly did. We have journeyed through the deeply unsettling physical morphology of the men and women in black. We explored the ancient, controversial genetic markers of Rh-negative blood.
And we witnessed the terrifying mechanics of tulpas stepping out of our internet browsers and into our physical living rooms.
It is a lot to process.
We have learned that reality isn't a solid, localized theater of dead physical matter. It is a shared, highly plastic, highly reactive construct.
It is continuously painted by our collective unconscious, our deeply buried ancient genetics, and our most visceral, diffuse fears.
The universe is listening to us, and sometimes it echoes our darkest nightmares back to us in the shape of a man in a suit.
And that leads me to one final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day, or more likely as you try to fall asleep tonight.
What is that?
If intense human focus, collective anxiety, and cultural expectation can literally bring the Slender Man or the Men in Black into physical existence, consider what else in your daily reality is merely a manifestation of your own expectations. Next time someone knocks on your door late at night and you feel that sudden, inexplicable chill run down your spine, pause before you turn the deadbolt. Ask yourself, are they just a visitor from the outside world, or are they a projection from the darkest corners of your own mind, waiting for you to invite them in?
A perfectly chilling note to end on. Check your blood type, guard your thresholds, and watch what you focus your energy on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning the boundaries of your reality.